Hello and welcome to this episode of Roundtable Talk with CGTN. I'm Zheng Chunying in Beijing. Today we're going to zoom in on one of the highlights of this year's CIFTIS, which is finance. As the guest country of honor of this year's CIFTIS, the United Kingdom is one of the world's leading financial centers. So what are some of the opportunities when it comes to collaboration between UK and China? And how are the financial services industry in both countries innovating to serve their real economies? Joining us in discussion today are our distinguished guest, Ms. Zheng, who is the managing partner of North China Markets Leader, PwC China. And also we have Mr. Clive Higgin, who is the managing director of Fitco-consulting Group. Great to have you with us on our show. So first of all, tell us more about this year's CIFTIS. What impressed you the most? Tell us your overall impression about this year's CIFTIS.
Okay, my impression of CIFTIS actually is green. And this year we see a lot of enterprises, when they talk about their topics, they all cover ESG and the green finance and green products and also green energy. And the other one is technology. We see in the exhibition, you can see a lot of innovative products with machine learning. And I think both the adults, but also the children, they all enjoy this exhibition.
What about you?
Yeah, well, I haven't seen too much of the exhibition, but I looked around the UK pavilion and other ones, and it looks very impressive with.
What are some of the activities that in UK Pavilion that impressed you?
Well, the virtual reality stand was quite impressive. Yeah.
Wow. So you just mentioned about green elements, or low carbon neutrality in this year's CIFTIS. We know that China is very ambitious in this area to be a world leader in this sector. How do you assess the agreements, the achievements that have been made in this sector?
I think since we talk about 30-60, that goal, I think China has invested a lot of efforts on the green asset, including the clean energy and the transformation of the traditional industry to lower the carbon emission. And also for the financial services industry, they all have invested a lot to issue the loans to the green energy industry, and also to support the client to transform from high carbon emission to low carbon emission. So what I've seen is we have achieved a lot, but of course there is still a long way to go.
We just talk about finance, which is one of the highlights of this year's event. What do you make of the role that finance plays in the development of green economy?
Well, I think China has actually met its targets for renewable energy set the 2020 climate summit. And I think the fact that about 30% of all new cars in China this year will be electric. So I think the financing of all this technology is quite impressive.
What about you?
Okay, actually when we study if you study this 2022, the annual report of the financial institutions industry in Asia, we happily to see that 100% of the listing banks, they all issue their ESG report. That's the highest industry among all the Asia listing companies. And that means that financial institutions, they are also focused on the green finance. And actually, on the other side, we also see the digital. Digital finance now we see play infrastructure role, actually, in the whole economic development.
And it just mentioned digitalization. It's been a trending word over the past few years. According to official data, the share of China's digital economy has risen to over 40% when it comes to the global, the country's national GDP. So what do you make of the impact of digital economy on development of real economy as a whole?
Okay. When we talk about digital economy, based on the WTO's prediction, actually very interesting, they said with the digital technology that will accelerate the growth of the world trade by 1.8 to 2%. That's a huge amount with the support of technology. And so what we've seen is, well, if you say the digital finance, we see the digitization in the financial services. That will make the financial institution, their services, to be more accessible and to the individuals in the rural areas, and also to be more friendly to the small and medium enterprises. Because before, without a very good solid collateral, the small to medium enterprises there cannot get loans from the big banks. But with the support of the digitization, with the big data and the cloud computing, the banks can easily to tell the whole picture and the credit rating of the small to medium enterprises, and easily to lend the loans to them. And so, on the other hand, and finance is also play an important role to support the digital economy. And actually, in China, in 2022, actually in 2022 we have seen the 7.8% increase in the digital in-trade and inbound and outbound trades, and that is a lot of increase in growth actually compared to the whole economic growth on the digital parts.
And talking about digitalization, digital economy, we know that the wide adoption of digital payments is, of course, one of the greatest demonstration of China's rapidly developing digital economy. So, have you tried mobile payments in China?
Sure, yeah.
Like Alipay, WeChat Pay?
I've done a lot of Alipay and WeChat Pay, yeah.
What do you make of the experience?
I think it's very good, because well, I mean, what I wanted to say about the digitization of the real economy, I've done quite a lot of research on the poverty elimination achievement of China, and the rural villages can basically put their products up on about 1,500 different e-commerce sites in China. And with the investment in road and rail infrastructure, their products can be sold immediately to the rest of China.
So you just mentioned one of the highlights of the role that digital economy plays in the real economy, that is poverty alleviation, right? And do you think, is there any lessons that other countries can learn from China when it comes to poverty alleviation, especially for those African countries and other developing countries?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the third world with poverty can learn a lot from China's process of poverty alleviation.
And talking about
in terms of infrastructure, and as I just said, a vital role in this is the e-commerce potential of the digital economy to get income into the poor areas fast.
We just talked about mobile payments, and as I said, that in the future there is great potential in third world countries and developing countries. But let's not forget the developed countries. It's already widely adopted in European countries, in the UK. Yeah. What do you think makes the mobile payment technology in China unique? What's so unique about China's mobile payment, from your perspective?
Well, I believe it's very good for stamping out any corruption, because basically if you've got to do everything electronic as opposed to cash, you can't hide away cash. So,
what's the mobile payment experience like in UK? Is there like a scan, what we do in China, like use a QR code to scan?
To be honest, I'm not so familiar, because I've been in China since 2007, so I just use cash when I'm back in the UK.
Yeah, actually, I've been traveled several recently, but actually I feel in China, just to use your mobile phone, basically you can go anywhere and pay anywhere. Right. But actually in Europe, I've been traveled to Europe and also US, there are a lot of grocery stores that cannot accept this kind of a digital pay. That means that the apps is not as popular as what we have been here. Yes. And I think the promotion of the digital pay is so important to actually for all the grocery stores. That is small to medium, they're actually small entrepreneurs, and they need this kind of support to benefit this digital era.
Yeah, yes. I think in the West, particularly in America and Europe, there's much less trust in the governments there, so people don't want to expose their private activities to the government. But in China, I think there's a huge level of trust in the government, so there's no problem with that. Yeah.
We've talked about the wide expansion of digital payments, of digitalization of finance, but there are still many financial institutions, many banks in China are struggling at the start of this digitalization transformation. So what do you think are some of the obstacles ahead?
What we have seen, actually, go back to the achievements we have made. We also studied the 2022 annual report of the banks. Actually, we have seen half of the large state-owned enterprises and large state-owned banks, and also half of the joint stock commercial banks, they all invest more than the investment in the technology increased by 10%, and that's a lot. And but also, what I've seen the challenge they're facing is actually it's not how much money you're going to invest. It's not about the system you have developed. It's not about the technology. It's not even about engineering. We have a lot of very excellent engineers sitting in the banks. But actually now we're talking about the culture, because when we talk about digital, it's kind of a different culture compared to our traditional financial industry. So they ask for more innovative, more exposure, and take more risk, but fail fast. But on that side, that means you need to upskill your employees from the front line to the back office. Everyone need to get involved. And also it's from the top down. It's not a bottom up innovation, but it's the top down revolution. So that should be on the top list of the chairman and also of the CEO of the banks.
You just talk about upskill the whole employees. So that's, when it comes to talent training, do you think it's also another challenge for development of this sector?
Well, I just wanted to say my own experience with Bank of China is they just produce a huge amount of paperwork for every transaction you want to do. So I think from a green perspective, they could get it all electronic. It would be much better and hopefully much more efficient. You know, I can't believe, for example, when I try to put US dollars into my Bank of China account, I'm usually sat there for 30-40 minutes getting the transaction done, which just seems ridiculous given how simple it should be. So I agree that the chairman of the banks need to address this from the top down and get efficiency instilled.
Yeah, I think, and also in addition to that, what I want to add on is every employee actually in the financial services industry need to really think about what the machine learning is going to disrupt your roles and the responsibility on your job. You have to see what the additional skills that you need. You need to get a training for the future. So everyone need to get ready for the future.
Yes, so we all have to get ready to get trained to embrace this digital future. But what specific measures should be taken? Do you think that the employees should be trained should there be a regular training in every financial institutions, or should there be more basic trainings in the academic field? Okay,
I can use PwC, my company, as an example. Actually, globally we invest $3 billion to train everyone globally, and every employees, including our receptions. And everyone should be included. And we give them the training. Actually, we have, first of all, before the training, we have a series of trainings. Before the training, we give everyone a test to test what we say not EQ, not IQ, is your digital Q. Your digital Q, and to test, and then you know what you don't know. After test, then you know which part you need to upskill. And this is a continuous learning process. So that is what I recommend. You know, the financial institutions, financial services institutions in China, they need to actually, I think first of all, they need to develop a comprehensive, systematic training, upskill training to everyone. It's not one or two, training courses, but it should be a systematic training process, and it should be a continuous training process.
Do you think that that is the job for the company or institution, or that's the job for universities or educational institutions?
I think that should be the job of the enterprises. That's the responsibility, what we call the ESG. That is the responsibility of all the enterprises, including financial services industry, but I think that should be all, because they need to take care of their employees to make sure that with the development or disruptions of the technology, their employees still can catch up with the future. Not to be laid off for the future, but actually they can catch up with it. And also they can enjoy the benefit from the increase of the efficiency and effectiveness by the digitization.
I think the advent of artificial intelligence is throwing big question marks into the whole game that's never been faced before since the Industrial Revolution. The fact that AI can just outthink humans for the first time. So I think in the bigger picture there needs to be a kind of government acceptance that maybe we just don't need.
Then do
workers.
you think in financial sector the human labor force will be replaced by artificial intelligence in this regard?
I believe there are some jobs, actually a large amount of the jobs will be replaced by the AI. Yeah.
In the near future?
In the near future, because so quickly, they catch up so quickly. But that doesn't mean the people will be replaced, because the financial services industry is services. So here is we are trading services. When you talk about services, you need interaction.
Yes.
You need
communication
emotion.
skills.
Yeah.
Interpersonal skills.
Yeah, right. And yeah.
So what are some of the characteristics that you are now looking for when you hire people now?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is your expertise.
Well, I think the one...
Especially for finance services.
It's kind of strategic leadership is the thing that humans can still do better than AI for the time being. But I mean, to be honest, when I got your questions yesterday, I went on to Skype, and Microsoft have introduced an AI technology called Bing, and I put each of your questions into it. I got 9 pages of intelligent documentation within 15 minutes.
Wow.
It would have taken me maybe a week to gather the same information. It's incredible how AI... It's the first time I've actually used it seriously. I was so amazed.
Yeah, but we're still a society with humans, so we need to still need.
Well, this is why I say governments have actually maybe got to take some responsibility. I think Finland's the only government that's fully accepting the idea that technology can replace people in a big way and actually finance people not to work. I personally believe China's in a better position to address this, given its huge government organization, than Western countries. And politicians are just not facing up to this brutal truth.
Brutal truth. Oh, we talked so much about the digital transformation of finance institutions, financial services industries, and that's the area where we have witnessed a lot of cooperation between China and the UK. So we know that United Kingdom is one of the leading financial centers in the world. So what do you think are some of the opportunities that you see for UK companies to help Chinese clients in this digital transformation?
Well, I think my country traditionally is very innovative and thinking out of the box, and I think this can be of great help to China. I mean, for example, Pearson Group have got an online English training system and testing system for Chinese people to help learn English, and there's UK systems working here in healthcare and in several other areas. So I think an interesting story I got from a really top British marketing person a few years ago. He said the first 30 years of China's economic revolution can be attributed to the Germans helping, but the next 30 years, the British, because we're recognized pretty universally as #1 in marketing and branding and advertising. We can do a lot to help China for the next 30 years in that area.
What about, is there any cooperation projects between PwC China and
Yeah,
UK?
definitely. I think there are several areas. Healthcare, you just mentioned, and education, because all these are pretty good in UK and well developed. And also go back to the financial services industry. Actually, we see currently we're experiencing the low interest period, and we don't have a lot of experience on that part, how to manage our loans, how to manage our assets, and how to do the investment under this kind of period. But actually, if you look at the UK and the European, actually, they are have a very good, well-developed risk management or asset management system to manage under the low interest period. So I think that is a very good knowledge and experience that we can adapt right away and to help to support, including our pension system, and to support our asset management, asset management, also insurance industry.
I think for the UK now, with the realities of Brexit coming home, they've been shielded by the pandemic for 3 years, but the reality now is that Europe, almost by definition, are going to make it really hard for Britain to do business with them, simply because they don't want another country to do a Brexit. So I think Britain now is waking up to the fact that China is a big economic opportunity. And we can now negotiate our own deals with China, not constrained. So now the pandemic's over, I think the future should be really positive for Britain and China.
Yeah, you talked about the China-UK cooperation in other economic and trade areas, and we know that we've witnessed very deep ties between the two countries in capital markets over the past few years. And also, we know that the United Kingdom has granted many Chinese companies license to open up their branches in London. How do you think the strategic partnership between the two countries benefit both countries, both when it comes to China and Britain?
Yeah, actually, we support our client to be listed in London Stock Exchange, and we found surprisingly, actually, to us, to our professional firms, we found this pretty easy. The process is pretty transparent, and the efficiency is pretty efficient, and also they accept the PRC, what we call the PRC gas. And so they accept our accounting standards to get listed in the UK stock exchange. So I think that is, with the capital market cooperation, that we have a lot of opportunities in addition to US, and we have a lot of opportunities in UK in the capital market. We should use Chinese enterprises should use this huge opportunity to go overseas capital market.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, prior to Brexit, London was really the major finance capital of the world. But now with Brexit, as I said, we now need to look overseas, and I think China can take full advantage of this and use what we're doing as a world leader in certain areas. I know in my business a constant issue that multinationals face in China is struggling with creativity and innovation. I think it's a cultural phenomenon in China. My personal view is that because you've got to learn this complicated character system at an early age, and then you have an education system which is very regimented and target-driven, and everybody's kind of coming out of the education system not thinking creatively. So I think there could be great synergy for Britain, who's actually, it's proven that we employ more percentage of our workforce in the creative industries. It's something like 18%. This was a few years ago. 18% of the UK workforce was working in creative industries, more than twice as many as the French or any other European country, for example. So this is the very thing China need, that Britain's got an abundance of. So I just think the closer links The big issue faced in Britain is just like in America, public opinion, because of issues like, in my opinion, misinformation about the human rights issue in China is basically creating a negative perception. But actually, the reason I say it's misinformed is because I believe the elimination of poverty should be recognized universally as the greatest human rights achievement ever. So China shouldn't be criticized, it should be copied. That's my view. So I hope that Britain can wake up to that fact and politically start opening up to China. Maybe a change of government with Labour coming into power next year offers a big opportunity.
Yeah, so you spoke highly of what China has been achieved when it comes to alleviating people's living standards, poverty alleviation. So we know that internet wealth management is also another highlights of what China, the progress that China has been made when it comes to improving their living standards. And we know that with the expansion of digitalization and also the opening of China's economy, the domestic asset management industry has witnessed a very rapid development over the past few years. So how do you assess the progress that has been made in this regard?
The asset management actually, as you mentioned, have grown tremendously in the past several years. Actually, we are now the second largest asset management in the world. But actually, I have to say we still have a long way to go, because if you look at for the asset management, there is a very important part is pension. And the pension, they have the three pillars. Pillar one is social security. We have a very strong social security, and it's being run by the government and it's run very well. And secondly, pillar two is the enterprises who buy the pension for their employees. And we have already seen the state-owned enterprises, they have done this, and also some big private-owned enterprises, they started to do this too. But on the pillar three is individual pension funds. But actually, since 2 years ago, the government started to encourage the development on this part and issue a lot of policy to support the development of this part. And actually, on this part, I have to say we are lack of the experience and also lack of the talents. And also on this part, actually, the China's government opened the door to the foreign investors to welcome them to come to China and to enjoy the future growth on the pillar three. Because if you look at the world, the pillar three play a very important and bigger majority role on the whole pension funds. So I think on that part, there's a huge opportunity ahead, but we need have a more strategic thinking on the long-term return, stable long-term return. We have to avoid the short-term volatility on this kind of pension fund operations. So I think that is what we can learn, from UK or from the other European companies.
Yes, you talked about stability, which is very important when it comes to wealth management. It's what we care most, right? So risk, and then we know that risk management is very important in this regard to keep it stable. So do you think is there any lessons that we can learn from the UK finance industry when it comes to risk management? And do you think this is somewhere that that UK can help Chinese clients?
Well, I first of all want to say the opening up in 2020 of China to allow wholly owned foreign enterprises in China is a big step forward. We're not yet seeing that because of the pandemic, but now going forward, I think it's going to make a big difference. So certainly, I think I'm not a huge expert on risk management, but I think that the fact that London got to be #1 bigger than New York and Tokyo before, we can offer a lot of insight and advice on how we achieve that. But if you want me to actually say about the UK economy, I personally believe that it's too overly dependent on the real estate sector. And we have had a history over the years of a roller coaster in real estate. similar to what China's experiencing right now with Evergrande, and other big real estate. So Britain has some major structural problems that Brexit is exacerbating. So right now, I believe there needs to be a big change in thinking in the UK government, to be honest.
So that's why there might be more opportunities where Britain, the UK companies are seeking in Chinese market to get more help and more support and to finally contribute to the revitalization, to the global economic recovery. And let's get back to the wealth management that we just touched upon. We know that in 2020, China lifted the limitations on the ratio of foreign shareholding in securities and fund management firms, allowing them to set wholly owned units on the Chinese mainland, which is really a big step forward. So what do you make of the progress made when it comes to China's liberalization of its capital market?
Actually, we will see, we help some of our clients to set up their companies or branches, subsidiaries in China after these new rules. And what I've seen, what they see the capital market, actually, they are looking for the real value in the enterprises, in the listing companies. And they have a patience to wait for the market price to reflect the real value of the companies. But when you talk about to see the real value, to really dig the value of the enterprises, the listing companies, then you need to see the future of the economic development. For example, you need to consider the ESG. You need to seriously take part the ESG as part of your assessment when you see the valuation of the listing companies, because a lot of listing company, when they talk about ESG, they think it's kind of a cost. Now, actually, based on a lot of analysis, the company who have talked about the ESG, who invest in ESG, actually have a better return to their shareholders, and of course to benefit all the stakeholders of the companies. So interestingly, when we see the foreign investor, when they come to China's market, they bring these ideas to our domestic market players, and to actually empower the development of the ESG in China's capital market.
At the beginning of the show, you also talked about how digital technology impressed you at this year's CIFTIS. I'm sure that you also watched a lot of high-tech innovations here.
I'm well aware of this. Yeah.
Really? What impressed you most when it comes to these high-tech?
Well,
have you seen the
as I said, I believe AI is going to be revolutionizing the world right now, and that includes the way economies run.
Yeah, it seems that the artificial intelligence has dominated many discussions when it comes to economic development.
My view is that such is the speed of it, that there's a danger that AI could actually start developing itself. So I think it's really important that companies wake up to this. Governments wake up to this and put in appropriate policies to get it under control.
Yes. So you've talked about, Evercoin has these two sides. Despite all those positive convenience and advantage of digital technologies, we have also witnessed some negative aspects of artificial intelligence and high techs. For example, issues like personal data collection, privacy, deepfakes, stuff like that. How do you think these challenges should be addressed in the future?
I think there is, for the enterprises who are using the machine learning or the AI, then the first thing I think is the data privacy. You cannot, because you're using the AI, then you can abuse the data privacy, especially the individual, because the individual is considering the minority. They don't have the power to fight with the big giant enterprises. So that is the responsibility of the enterprises to protect the data privacy of the individuals. And the second is data security. And it's so important because, especially for some small to medium enterprises, when they use this this high-tech technology, first of thing, they need to think about whether they have a good data security system to protect their system and protect the data. And that's the data security. And the third one, I think that is not only for the enterprises, but also for the government, to think about the fairness of the machine learning, to think about the discrimination, maybe the potential discrimination than the machine learning. Because the machine learning is learned from us. But actually, as a human, we have a lot of disadvantage, including the unconscious bias, discrimination. Yes. So when we talk about the machine learning, then we need to think about this kind of ethic. We talk about the AI ethic. But actually, that is embedded from human. That we need to intentionally, I think that's the government need to play a very important role to make sure the machine learning will provide a fair environment to everyone.
And to raise the awareness of every internet users as well, really. So I think, as you just said, every internet users, government, and enterprise, they all have a role to play when it comes to make better use of technologies in order to better embrace this digital transformation, this revolutionization. Okay, so great to have you with us, and we had a very pleasant talk and hope to see you next time.
Okay.
So that's it for this edition of Roundtable Talk. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Okay.